Julie Murphy with Arizona Farm Bureau, and guess what? We're doing our Talk to a Farmer Friday on Wednesday for a number of reasons. We're coming into the Memorial Day weekend, and we just figured it would be kind of fun to do it this way. Well, guess where we're at? We're at the Capitol building, and we're in the Arizona Capitol Museum, and we're in the USS Arizona Memorial section, a very somewhat sobering, but a memorial to and tribute to our soldiers that served on the USS Arizona in World War II. So, Nich Kinney, thank you for joining us. Nich Kinney is president for Maricopa County Farm Bureau, and you are also what I like to call an ag consultant, correct?
Sure.
But can you give me more insights about you before we launch into what we're talking about?
Sure, I'll give a quick bio. I grew up in Yuma, Arizona. I went to school at the University of Arizona. I'm an ag engineer. I'm a PE in Texas and Arizona. Been working in production agriculture since my late teens, and currently consult on large-scale agriculture products. Mostly, if I had my druthers, focusing on irrigation and water, but really branching into everything related to agronomics and crop production systems.
So we may have to keep this interview short because Nich is going into a water meeting, speaking of water, with the governor, right?
The governor's office, let's be very clear.
Okay.
We don't usually get to see face of the governor, but we get to speak to her top staff. And
That's
so,
awesome.
Should be a productive meeting today.
Yeah, I'm excited about that. So on this point, what we're doing now is the Census of Agriculture series. And I've got about 8 or 9 of you that are going to be participating. I'm trying to highlight some of the key points within the Census of Agriculture, and one of those happens to be Arizona agriculture's high productivity, and especially in the top 3 counties, Maricopa, which you're very familiar with, Yuma, and Pinal. So
In the scope of places where you can walk from county line to county line across America, Maricopa County is just humongous.
it's huge. Yeah.
But that also means it's got a great diversity of agriculture, and it's right at the center part of the valley, so it's always had historical water coming in from both directions, and that crop optionality has led to very, very productive dairy yields, the best per animal yields, historically ranking in the world, but always the best in America. So that's off the charts.
Yep.
We can produce the forage year-round that feeds that industry. That's high value.
Mm-hmm.
We also get the chance on occasion, because of our growing conditions, to export those products outside. So that brings more value back. Typically in agriculture, you produce where it's most prolific and sell where it's most marketable. With our hay crop, we get the chance to do that. So that takes generally would be a lower value crop and makes it more valuable when we do that right here in the heart of the state. And the last one, of course, would be the type of crops that we can grow. When it comes to produce crops and crops for human consumption, those are all much more valuable than what other ag crops like corn and soybeans, or items that have to be processed and go through multiple stages before they get to the consumer at a low dollar per calorie. We can grow crops that are very high dollar per calorie because they provide that diversity that lands on people's plates.
And you get that because you grew up in Yuma.
Yeah, Yuma.
You saw it from the very beginning. You know, the other thing I'm struck about Maricopa County is that you spoke to it, the size, but just the commitment by our farmers and ranchers that I know very well in the Maricopa County area. Yeah, that's replicated in all the counties, but it's really neat to be able to say that Maricopa, Pinal, and Yuma are in the top 40 counties in the United States. And so when you think about how many counties are in America, I think it's 3,300, something like that. That's a huge, pat on the back for our farmers here in the state of Arizona.
I want to add one additional thing to that, especially relating to Maricopa and Pinal County, and even more so relating to Maricopa, is in the midst of that, there's the city of Phoenix and the urban sprawl that historically has displaced agriculture. The urban sprawl has been built on land leveling, utilities being brought in, the power infrastructure, the water infrastructure, and yet, as we've had a decline in gross acres, we've still continued to grow and increase in value. And so the value per acre is really the story.
Okay, value per acre is the story, and that's good for us to remember. And so what you're also telling me is some of that infrastructure our farmers built.
Of course.
The infrastructure that I'm enjoying as a suburban woman is because of my farmers and ranchers.
I would say this is the natural development of a community.
Okay.
And it's looking at where has the previous investment already lent itself to where I can build on that.
Okay.
And you look at leveled land, agriculture does that. You look at waterways that can provide drainage or water delivery, agriculture has delivered that amount in spades.
Yeah.
You look at the volume of energy that has to be brought in through transmission lines, through power drops. Agriculture has done that in spades, where developments often can step in and not have to pay attention to any of those major three. They exist.
That's
And
awesome.
then they can build from it. And so, I know it's attrition of agriculture, and I wish if I had my druthers, we would never lose a piece of farm ground again.
Right.
But the reason we do is it's because it's also very, very valuable land for development.
That's awesome. I mean, we have to respect and appreciate that. And a lot of times we've always heard that farmers, their 401k is when they sell their land. That's a retirement plan.
Can we talk about that for just a minute?
Sure,
That's such a
sure.
critical part of it too, is most farmers don't have a savings plan per se, or a pension plan that maybe other occupations would provide, but they've generated wealth by consistently adding to the value of their land asset and their land value. They've also had the ability to keep up with inflation over time as land values have inflated and increased. The trouble is, at some point, they'll have to cash out one way or the other.
Right. Very good point. So, pausing for station identification, so to speak. This is Julie Murphy with Arizona Farm Bureau, and my guest today for our Talk to a Farmer is Nich Kinney, and he is giving us some great insights on Maricopa County, one of those leading counties within the United States that has high productivity. And to that point, good segue, according to the USDA Census of Ag, Arizona farms and ranches produced 5.2 billion in ag products in 2022. So that's a mark in time. Again, what are some of the other things that you think allow us, because that's actually a higher number than the previous census, despite the fact that surface water in Pinal County has been reduced, they don't have cap anymore, despite some of the things you mentioned about loss of land. Why do you think that number is bigger? Maybe it goes back to some of the other things you said.
Well, I think it goes back to what we do really well in Arizona is play to our strengths.
Right.
Also, we don't have subsidy type programs, and so there's zero complacency. I mean, I think that historically people point at the farmers and say they're doing the same thing their dad did, their granddad did. It's a complacent model. That's not the farmer I know in Arizona. The farmer in Arizona is always looking for an edge, and when you're looking for an edge, you continue to improve your skill, improve your craft. And so people have diversified a little bit, or maybe they've gotten more unique, or maybe they've figured out a way to take what they've been backgrounded with, add their own twist to it, and become more profitable. And I think that's the major additional contribution.
Well, that's a good segue into this question. Because of your ag consultancy work, you've got a lot of farm family clients, right? So what's the one thing that distinguishes the Arizona business professional versus the average business professional?
Okay, so the ag business professional, this is a wonderful question. We can talk for miles on this, okay? So stop me, Julie, but I gotta mention, I'm an ag engineer, so I've got formal training. When I started working as a young man, I went to a farm in this was near Snowflake, Arizona. And I'll name names. I lived with the family there for a while, the Reedheads. The first introduction I had to the man there, Mike Reedhead, and if Mike's listening, he'll get a laugh at this because he'll probably remember it too. He kind of scoffed in a way that a very wise old school rancher might, even though he was young at the time, and says the best way to train an engineer is to put a shovel in his hand. And I thought, there we are. That is the difference. I've got, in my case, the sense of industry is off the charts. An ag professional is not satisfied with a 15-hour day, and typically it's an 18-hour day. We're not looking for a paycheck, we're not looking for quick time. Where oftentimes the other professional is, I'm 7 hours in, I gotta get to my vacation, I've gotta get to my break. So that's one major distinguishing trait, is that the sensibilities of hard work and effort from agriculture really still convey in the professional settings. The other would be the diversity of skill sets. Obviously, we're talking and communicating well. I've got a meeting with the governor's office, AWR, meeting with senators, etc. Deal with many professionals and investors, but I can also go home and weld and fabricate and operate equipment and farm and plant and all of those things. And so you've always got this connection to the real and the tangible, and I think that is a critical distinguishing factor with an ag professional versus, say, a business professional, is you always are ground truthing what you're doing.
Yeah.
The other thing I'd like to go back into that next point is, I love my family, I love my friends. Ag professionals still hold those core principles of a community near and dear. I've had mentors along the way who've taken me in. I speak of my Creed head. He let me operate, break, destroy whatever equipment it was to learn along the way. But he's not the only one. I spent my time on Sundance Farms. That first day, it's an open door. Go to operate this equipment. It's like, okay, here we are.
Wow.
On. And so, in terms of how you create what would be unique from an ag professional versus a normal professional, there's a lot of things that contribute to that.
Wow, I love that. And you know, Joe, I got teased this week, Monday morning. I sent an email to our IT individuals because I wasn't linking to our F drive at work, and it was something like, I must have sent it at 6:30. He goes, "What are you doing so early?" I said, "Hey, I'm a farm kid, a retired farm kid, and I have no excuses because I'm working for farmers and ranchers, and sometimes I feel like you guys are 24/7.
No, it really is. And there probably is a skewed sense of
Yeah.
industry, don't get me wrong, but yeah, we'll put the hours in.
Yeah.
And sometimes you'll do it, and
Yeah.
you're like, well, today was less than minimum wage, so.
Right. Yeah, especially when you think about the hours that you're putting in. So I've never felt like I had an excuse. If I have to work weekends to get the publication out, I'm going to get the publication out, because you guys aren't going to give me any sympathy.
No, it was like, oh, 90 hours, Julie, that's cute.
Yeah, it's like, so what? I do it all the time. So what do you like most about the farming, especially Maricopa County? You have all permission to be Maricopa County centric. But when you look at all the farmers and ranchers that you hung out with, I love your story about when you first started as an engineer in business. Is there something that, quote unquote, you would call a favorite about farming, and certainly in Maricopa County?
Oh man, now I'm on the spot. I don't ever think about it that way, because it's all kind of comprehensive. I would say that in Maricopa County, similar with Yuma, I love the fact that we're growing produce. I love the fact that we grow food that is directly marketed to tables. Because often you'll hear people say, "Well, I can't get that good food in the store, I need the local grown." And deep down I'm saying, let's go to the produce section.
Right.
Like, let's just walk through this. For other sectors, I mean, I've early on fell in love with beef. I love our beef industry. That is just off the charts. I love the fact that I've had the chance to work with multiple dairies in Maricopa County. You want to talk about some dense calories that provide a lot of quality to life, to our Western way of life, and the Arizona American culture. Dairy has just been critical.
It's amazing, yeah.
So all of those things combined, and I look at, we're living in caloric dense, rich nutritional value communities, and that's exactly what we produce here. And that's our contribution to everybody. All the folks that go to work at Intel or wherever they get up and go work for any of their cities or municipalities or whatever their sector of production is, they wake up and consume and fuel their lives through exactly what we're producing right here.
Right here.
Maybe they're not grateful for it, I don't know, I'm not really worried about that. What I'm worried about is, can we deliver something valuable to the community? And absolutely all day, every day.
Wow, I love that. So, and to tag on to your point about local, if you go to the produce aisle of any grocery store in Arizona, the majority of the leafy greens are going to be from, and that includes the cauliflower, that includes the broccoli, but all those leafy greens are coming from Yuma. That's local.
It's local.
And it's as local as it is in the
I would say
farmers market.
on all of those things, don't overlook the Phoenix metro area. We grow
Right.
plenty of those things here.
That's
Even
true.
beets and radishes and turnips, some leafy greens,
And
lots
I'm
of
glad
broccoli,
that you brought up.
watermelon, cantaloupe, sweet corn, and even the things that taste really good.
Yeah.
I gotta look at broccoli. I'm gonna eat my broccoli, but I'm gonna put some cheese over it just to make it more palatable. When it comes to those other things I really like, it's like, okay, we're gonna have watermelons and sweet corn and those which are grown right here.
Well, see, I made you go Maricopa County centric because it's true, and sometimes we forget that. We like to mention Yuma because of produce, but it's also Maricopa County. We're producing a lot of produce in Maricopa County.
Yeah.
So I needed that correction because I have a tendency to do that myself. But even then, that pendulum's swinging back to California in the summer because it gets too hot here. I mean, California is California. We're adjacent to it, so
Yeah.
it's really not that far away. It's like, what's your definition of local? And they're shipped in refrigerated trucks at a specific temperature. So even if I'm living in New York, I can get my Maricopa County
Yeah,
produce in about 3 to 4 days.
Well, let me mention California on that, because although many do look negatively on California, I oversee currently 5 ranches in California as
Oh,
well.
wow.
And we grow almonds and pistachios and tomatoes and a handful of those other things. That is a beautiful place to produce.
Amen.
There's no reason at all for us to denigrate
Yeah.
California ag.
Have
It's
you ever
not
been
much.
to Salinas,
I
California?
have.
I just love that place, especially when they're harvesting their, I think, artichokes.
Oh, sure.
They do a lot of artichokes in Salinas, California. So what technology has the most potential for agriculture, or is it a combination of technologies?
You're gonna laugh. You're gonna laugh at this response. This is gonna test the merits of everybody's cowboy culture. My favorite songwriters and singers is Ian Tyson. He's got a song, one of the stanzas is, technology is gonna set us free, but that's not the way it turned out to be. A little bit of leisure is harder and harder to find. And what I have found is that everybody wants to say technology is going to be the answer. That has not been my experience. Technology develops incrementally along the way, and it always has. If we go back to simple things like the steel that was used in plows, to mechanized tractors, to gene sequencing in corn, to sensors in fields, to drones, to satellite images, all the way on, all of those things keep us on that plane of trajectory. Each one of those is a tool that allows for better decision making.
Okay.
And I'm finding that in our day now, where we have so many technologies that abound, I use, on trees, for example, I use a probe that sticks into the tree that measures the sap flow and the pressure.
Right.
It like literally is giving you a pulse of how that tree is using water and functioning health-wise.
They're doing that a lot now with some of our orchards
Mhm.
in Mojave County and some of the other areas.
It's a good tool, but
Right.
here's the caution, is that technology is outstanding. That is not going to manage your crop. That is a tool that informs the producer to make sound management decisions. And those sound management decisions are still the crux of productive agriculture. Can you take that input, can you take that data, figure out how you are going to now apply that to the basic principles of economics, which is profit is revenue minus expenses, which is solid agronomy, which is can I put the proper resources in to get the results that I want, proper marketing so that I can take this to market and sell it for the highest price at the right time, on and on and on. So I embrace any and all technologies, and there's not one single one that I would identify as the savior. But when you look at the suite of technologies, if you're willing to look at this one and this one and this one and put them together, sometimes you can get a real stepwise change in your production system.
Wow.
That lends mostly to efficiency. We're talking about inputs in being more generous on their outputs out. But any one technology is not the answer. That's the caution I would like to share, I think, with that.
That's
Technology
good.
isn't the answer, but it's part of allowing the person who is the decision maker to make better decisions.
And you're our ag engineer, so you get that. But I like the point that you also brought out, that it's technology, it's step by step, it's incremental. And maybe if you put together, you cobble together a suite of technologies for your particular farm, it might be the sweet spot for you, but it might not work for the farmer down the road.
That's going to be critical.
Okay.
And this
Very
is an
good.
important point that I think a lot of people will mischaracterize Arizona agriculture with, is that they would like to say this Arizona agriculture is the same as everywhere else. I've never seen any ag sector that's the same as everybody else. It's always different.
Yeah,
So
and that's good.
I think
Yeah.
that if I were to hear the word diversity, those are the things I step in and say, that is diversity, is recognizing these are the strengths we have. We're not going to grow coffee in Arizona, but maybe we consume a lot of coffee here. They're not going to grow alfalfa where they grow coffee. Can we play to our strengths and trade so everybody's happy?
And be prosperous in the process
Each-
for both parties.
All parts.
Saudi Arabia gets a lot of criticism because they're shipping some of our Arizona hay all the way out there, but they're feeding their people.
The
And we
people-
want them to feed their people so we don't have another crisis.
But those sensibilities are just so critical.
Yeah.
It's people that are being fed, and we need to understand that as
Right.
exports happen.
So I know I can't get a mouse in the corner view of the governor's staff water meeting, but what's your take on our current water challenges? Are we really meeting where we need to meet, and doing what we need to do? And
Now is the question: how much time do we have, Jill?
yeah,
This one's.
I always ask the water question. I get myself in trouble.
No, I would say, as an overarching, the future of Arizona agriculture is profound and not yet peaked. Like, we have tremendous upside to go with a major contingency. Can we be wise with our water law that supports that? And I think that's the crux we're fighting on right now. We've never been more productive. We've just never been more productive per unit of water. The challenge that we're finding, and this is a little bit of an editorial on my part, is there's a lot of folks that look at the desert and don't see the desert for its strengths and expect that the desert is going to have just an amazing abundance of water. It never has, it never will, but the Colorado River has ran for millions of years. The Salt and the Verde River have ran for millions of years. The aquifer below Phoenix has risen over the last 40 years. If we have proper policies in place, we can be very robust when it comes to irrigated agriculture in Arizona. But we are right on the precipice where there's probably some designs that like to undercut not just irrigated agriculture, but all agriculture in Arizona, because they don't recognize the benefit that it provides. Also, there is that huge elephant in the room that agriculture uses over 70% of the water in the state. It used to use more than that. Every irrigated state, every state in the West has that disproportional, if you will, use of water to agriculture.
We like with that statistic. Even internationally, it's more like 80% of that particular country's is using the water, that much water.
The nature is over 70%, and this is the number that I'm quote repeating but not quoting. 70% of the food produced is on arid or semi-arid lands, because it provides a wonderful production system for reliability. You don't have rainfall ruining alfalfa. You don't have hail that's taking out a produce crop. The dairy cattle can perform incredibly well because they're not snowed out. You have wonderful birth rates amongst your animals because the temperature's somewhat easier for the animal to thrive in.
Right.
And so when you look at those strengths, you want to lean into that, but that all requires a little bit of water.
And the thing that I'm always struck with is scarcity always creates innovation.
Yeah.
So give us time, I love that you're saying we're not at our peak yet. So I can understand then maybe why that overarching productivity number for us from the Ag Census was 5.2 billion. I think last time it was 4 point something. So
I think it'll continue to grow.
yeah.
I think there's something about scarcity too, though, is I don't want that root word to be that we're scared with scarcity.
Okay.
And so we need to lean into that in a way to say that the time and place for us to fight for agriculture really is now, but that fight that's on is related to water and securing water in a reliable way so that there can be water for generations to come for all users. My fear is that, going back to that 70% number, there's a big faction that's the voting bloc per se that can be persuaded to say there's such an abundance of water in agriculture, the farmers are using it all. If we just skim off the top of that, we can have all of our water needs taken care of without recognizing that that's skimming off of the top, because ag still is a marginal type economic model. You skim off the top, ag goes away.
It goes away.
And you do not have a thriving society without healthy agriculture. The countries that really get that understand food security, and they make it a priority. My experience is the countries that have taken food security for granted fall quickly, because that 1% of contributors to ag provides a very robust backbone. And that backbone is there, the society grows.
Look what happened to Sri Lanka.
There we go.
Yeah. So, one last question, and maybe you've already answered that as well. It sounds like you're hopeful about Arizona agriculture. Any final statements related to what we've been talking about. This has been a great interview, by the way.
Well, thank you. I've enjoyed it. I would say we're in the fight. That's part of it. Going back to that, what's one of the things that an ag professional has to do? I never grew up thinking that each day I was going to be at the Capitol fighting for my profession. I just didn't think that was, like, I thought I'd be able to step into work and accomplish a task and be done. But I'm at the Capitol every week now. This will be my third time this week. I didn't think that was going to be part of what farming was. But my invitation would be to everybody that has the acumen and the bent to recognize agriculture is critical, needs to be voicing their opinion and saying, yes, we must secure agriculture. It is that critical to us. Yes, we must secure these water resources. It is that critical to everybody's well-being.
Wow. Nich Kinney, Ag Engineer, President for Maricopa County Farm Bureau. Thank you for this interview. Very insightful. We'll share this also on our website because so many people have asked, especially those that aren't on social media, so we've made a provision for them as well. And for those that joined us live, Joel, did we get any comments and questions? Normally we don't during the lives, but just in case.
We did have one comment from G4 Farm Ranch. How about Cochise County? They have one of the largest dairies in AZ.
And Cochise County is in there. They're just not listed in the top 40. All of our counties, productivity-wise, here in the state of Arizona are wonderful with their production. We just happen to have 3 of the counties that fall into that 40. So thanks for asking that. In fact, we can get county specific for you. If I get one of my Cochise County farmers on here, we'll highlight some of their statistics.
I would say Cochise falls right into that same model. It's just a matter of where they fall in that scale. They've got a huge dairy, great production, great climate for it. So yeah, that doesn't surprise me at all.
Yeah, and thanks for that question. Again, everyone, thank you for joining us. And this will also be available saved in the Reels on Instagram, and we'll also have it on Arizona Farm Bureau. And again, Nick, thank you so much.
Julie, thank you. It's been great.
Awesome.